Being a head coach in the NBA is not an easy job. Being a successful head coach, some would say, is close to impossible. Being a successful interim head coach, that's a whole nother level, as Doug Christie faces some very difficult decisions, especially when it comes to his closing lineups, who to have on the floor, who to have off the floor. What's most important is winning basketball games, and he discussed that at Kings practice right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News here in the ABC 10 newsroom. Got back here after spending a day at the Sacramento Kings practice facility, the first practice day for the Kings in quite a long time. Not just the All-Star break. Really, this was the first full practice day that the Sacramento Kings have had together since the trade deadline. So a really important day, a day that a lot of Kings fans, a lot of you Locked On Kings listeners have been pointing to as the day that this team needs. Just this is what they're missing, some practice time together, and they'll gel and they'll look a lot better. And I hope that you are right. However, practice is only a few hours. And for those of you wondering, Matt, why didn't they have more practice time? They had a week off together. It's because the All-Star break is a break for a reason. It's about players getting away. Now, they can still spend their own individual time working on their game if they want to. Markelle Fultz, for example, went home for a couple of days, but a Kings trainer went with him to work with him on his game. So they can get their individual work in, but team practices are not allowed. So the team gets back together yesterday on Wednesday. They got together and don't know specifically what they did, but it was not a practice. They practiced today. Of course, they have their game against the Golden State Warriors tomorrow night in the Golden One Center, and then it's right back into the season. The chaos resumes. So practice time is already hard to come by during the season. Same thing during that All-Star break. But at the very least, these guys got away for a little bit, hopefully got to refresh and get ready for these final 27 games, the home stretch of the season. And the Kings are locked in a very, very, very tight playoff race. One game above 500 tomorrow night. They take on the Golden State Warriors, who are technically identical to them in record, but the Warriors are in 10th. The Kings are in 9th because the Kings have beaten the Warriors so far 2 times this season, and they have the tiebreaker. Well, tomorrow night's game is extremely important for a lot of reasons. I'll get to that more later on in the show, but I wanted to emphasize the responsibilities on the shoulder of interim head coach Doug Christie. Now, Doug has been the interim head coach for a while. He's had more often than not success as the interim head coach of the Sacramento Kings and have put them in this position to where they are in this race over the final 27 games. But obviously that's not good enough. That's not good enough for Doug. That's not good enough for these players. That's not good enough for this fan base. That's sure as heck not good enough for this organization. Jobs are on the line with the Kings making it to the playoffs, and it is a mandate and expectation, not just from the city, but from this ownership group, that this team get back to the playoffs after they missed the playoffs last year. Now, it doesn't matter how they get there, right? If you get there through the play-in, great, as long as you are playing an actual, legitimate playoff series. And while getting into the top 6 and going right into the playoffs outright is still very, very possible, like I just discussed with Kyle Madsen earlier on this week, top 6 just feels unlikely at this point. To me, the goal for the Sacramento Kings should be 7th or 8th. Get into those 2 spots, because as they stand right now in 9th, it's the same spot they finished last year. And funny enough, it was the Warriors who finished in 10th. In 9th, the Kings get to host the first play-in game. That's fun to have it on your home court, except in 9th or 10th, you have to win 2 games to get in. In 7th or 8th, you just have to win 1. And if you lose 1, it's okay. Let's say the Kings finish in 8th. They lose to 7th. Well, then 8th would host 9 or 10. The winner of that game then gets the 8th and final seed. So it's extremely important for the Sacramento Kings to get up to 7th or 8th place. And in order to do that, of course, they're going to have to win a majority of these 27 games, including a very difficult stretch coming up in the month of March. Now, the difference between winning and losing for the Kings is going to be very marginal. It doesn't surprise me at all that the majority of their games are coming down to the wire. I expect that to continue. And like we saw in the last game in New Orleans before the All-Star break, dropping a game can happen simply because the wrong guy is on the floor. Keon Ellis has more than made a case for himself as someone who should be on the floor during majority closing and maybe even starting minutes. I don't know if he's ever going to break into the starting lineup over the final 27 games unless there's an injury, knock on wood. But making his way into the closing lineup consistently, I think, is a conversation that has been had and needs to continue being had. The tough part is, though, if you insert Keon Ellis into your closing lineup, for whatever reason, the shooting, the defense, all of the above, who do you take out? I think some people would naturally go, oh, Keegan Murray, because Keegan Murray's been struggling offensively. But Keegan Murray gives you needed defensive size at that forward position that Keon Ellis at 6'3" cannot handle. So to me, Keegan is a no. Maybe it's Malik Monk. Well, to me, Malik Monk, outside of Markelle Fultz, is the only real playmaker that the Sacramento Kings have. I know Zach LaVine has shown capability of it. He had 10 assists the other night, but I trust Malik Monk in that role more than I trust Zach LaVine in that role. I think Malik's far more comfortable with the ball in his hands in that sense than Zach LaVine is. So to me, it always comes down to LaVine or DeRozan. And if you're going to have Keon Ellis on the floor to close a close game, he's either going to have to replace one of the two of those guys or not be on the floor at all. Therefore, Doug Christie faces a very, very difficult position. I didn't ask him directly at practice, hey, would DeMar DeRozan be okay with being benched, or would Zach LaVine be okay with being benched? But I essentially, like I alluded to, you've got a lot of players who think they should be on the floor in closing time. Obviously, they want to be out there. Not all of them can be out there. How do you handle those late game rotations? And here's what Doug said.
We talked before about how difficult the job can be, finding the playing time for everybody with how talented this roster is. From just the short time with these guys, how do you feel they've responded to when their number is called versus isn't called, guys that feel they could be on the floor, not being on the floor to close a game, for example?
I mean, it's always going to be a problem. It's an age-long problem that we haven't always had here, to be honest with you. We have credit to the front office and everybody there that they did a good job of bringing in talent. The bottom line is we win the game. I don't care how it happens. And hopefully everyone is on the same page with that. And I think not only on the same page, same paragraph, same sentence, and same word. And we will see, because the competition starts tomorrow. The rotations and all those things, it's going to be whatever it takes to win the ball game. Some nights it may be this way, some nights it might be that way. Some nights you play a lot, some nights you don't play as much. But hopefully on the left side of the ledger, it's a W for the Kings. That's really all that counts.
Whatever it takes to win the game. And Doug Christie also talked about there. He wants the entire team to be not just on the same page, but the same paragraph, the same line, the understanding that as long as they're winning, what they all have to collectively do, even if it's a job that they aren't happy with, or even if they have to sit on the bench and watch somebody else close out the game, as long as they are winning games, that's what's most important. And getting the players to buy in on this is a whole different story altogether. In fact, Zach LaVine also chimed in really quickly on late game rotations.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's his job. You know, obviously I'm accustomed to playing late game in the crunch time. That's what I do. But, you know, to win games, you got to do whatever's done. I think that's his decision to make, and, you know, we all support that as long as we're getting wins.
It's pretty straightforward from Zach. I mean, he's accustomed to being on the floor during those moments. And the reality is, more often than not, he will continue to be on the floor in those moments. I think if there's a correct answer to this conundrum for Doug Christie, it's not one player or the other. It's not Keon is always going to be in there for DeMar. Keon's always going to be in there for Zach LaVine. I think it's a game-by-game basis. So you're going to have to look at each game and each circumstance and analyze what is best on that given night. Now, that does invite some inconsistencies with rotations. If a player like Zach LaVine doesn't know if he's going to be closing the game every single night, and he thinks he should. If a player like Keon Ellis doesn't know if he's going to be getting those minutes in crunch time in a close game or not, that can cause some inconsistencies, just like an inconsistent starting lineup can cause some troubles. But ultimately, the way the game is playing out, like the New Orleans game is a great example. I know it's the most recent example we have, so a lot of people are more on the Keon should replace DeMar DeRozan than Keon should replace Zach LaVine side of those two, because DeMar took a lot of shots there towards the end of the game and missed a lot of shots, which led to the Kings losing that game. But it really is a game-by-game basis. Like that particular game, Zach LaVine had 30 plus. You're getting torched by CJ McCollum, and that's it on the other end of the floor. DeMar DeRozan had 2 or 3 cracks at it, at a shot late. They weren't falling. Okay. Make the decision, how difficult it may be. And I do not envy Doug Christie at all to be in this position, but make the difficult decision to say, hey, DeMar, I just don't think you got it tonight. I think we need to put Keon in these moments to see if we can string together some stops. It's a very, very difficult position for any head coach to be in, let alone an interim head coach. But that might be the difference between the Sacramento Kings winning and losing basketball games. And they're at a point with 27 games remaining this season that every single loss piles up quickly, and every single loss could end up being catastrophic. So let me know what you think. Are you of the belief that Keon Ellis should be getting playing time in crunch time over the final 5 minutes? If so, do you feel confident with it being one player for sure? Are you okay with it taking it on a game-by-game basis? What would you do if you were interim head coach Doug Christie in this very, very difficult spot? Hit me up on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can also reach me on Blue Sky on that same handle. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I have a lot more from Kings practice today, including Zach LaVine talking about the limited practice time and the importance of this practice time that they're getting right now. Doug Christie talks about the start of this playoff race and his approach to the playoff race. Plus, we got this chance to speak with new King Markelle Fultz for the first time. I was really impressed by Markelle and actually really excited to see Markelle hopefully play for the Sacramento Kings tomorrow against the Golden State Warriors. That's all still to come here on Locked On Kings. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than in FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. FanDuel's live betting feature is super easy. It keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether you're backing the Sacramento Kings for a late game rally or picking a player like DeMar DeRozan to hit a clutch bucket or a game winner. You never feel like you will miss your chance on FanDuel. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So practice time may be limited over the remainder of this season, but you got to make the most of it. Right? How will the Sacramento Kings, will they look any different tomorrow night after the break and the practice time? And how much of a difference will be that practice time? Like, for example, so I'm in practice and we're seeing a lot of the same things, right? We're seeing shooting drills. It was fun to see Jonas Valanciunas and Domantas Sabonis partnered up for a lot of shooting drills, guys getting their individual work in and their little competitions and stuff. They have to hit a certain amount of shots before they wrap up practice and call it a day. But then after practice was done, Jay Triano took a majority of the new guys to walk them through the Kings offense. Markelle Fultz was there. Jake LaRavia was there. Jonas Valanciunas was there, just walking through the differences in this offense to get Markelle and everybody, but especially Markelle as the point guard, up to speed on everything. So how much did this day of practice time and the work that the team got to put in today, in addition to film sessions and everything like that, how much of a difference will that make tomorrow against the Warriors? Or will it simply be that, hey, this team is refreshed because they got some time away and can lock in for these final 27 games? Regardless, the start of this playoff race and the start of coming out of this All-Star break is unbelievably important. Like, think back to 2 years ago when the Kings made it to the playoffs, right? They were in the 3rd seed going into the All-Star break, but they were just coming off of a trade deadline where all they did was bring in Kessler Edwards, right? They decided to stand pat. At the time, I was a big fan of that decision. I thought it was the right decision. It ended up being the right decision. That team was playing really well. They'd gotten you that far, but people were concerned, hey, this final stretch of the season, teams made some trades around you. The West is tough. They have more experience. These teams are going to be gunning for you. Can the Kings hold on? Well, they came out of the All-Star break red hot and really solidified themselves as a playoff team in the West and really secured that 3rd seed that they ended up finishing in. So the start of the quote-unquote second half, but really this home stretch of the season for the Kings is going to be really important, especially considering they have very winnable games against the Warriors, the Jazz, and the Charlotte Hornets before the schedule gets really, really, really difficult. Well, Zach LaVine talked about the practice time and how important it was for him and this team just to get together a little bit, spend some time working on some things on the floor outside of just trial by fire game action.
Make a run and make a push. You know, we understand who we have to play and what we have to do. The new group, you know, we're glad that we have this time of the break to try to take advantage of that too. But, you know, the league doesn't care about, you know, new pieces or new faces. So we have to do our job.
How much did you guys need the time on the practice court together just to work some things out?
It's good, you know, because we were pretty much playing on the run those first, 3-4 games. So it's good to put in some sets. For me, get to know people's names. It's really good.
How much can you accomplish in just like 1 or 2 practices, though, in that regard?
As much as is necessary. It's not like you're going to get a training camp or a full season of chemistry, but you can get the basic things in, ask questions, and start to get a feel for what guys like.
It's important to understand, too, you don't want to load too much into these practices, right? You don't want, we only have 1 or 2 practices together over the next couple of weeks. Let's just cram everything we possibly can. You don't want to overload any of these players and get them to think rather than just react, especially with Doug Christie's style and Doug Christie's philosophy of he doesn't want them to think the game. He wants them just to play naturally. So the Kings were not ever going to approach these practices and try and hammer in a lot of different things specifically and add a bunch of plays or add a bunch of things to the table and try and address and fix everything that they've seen over the last couple of weeks. They're going to hyper focus on a few things. Zach talked about working like with Domantas Sabonis more on their 2-man game, becoming more comfortable overall with that. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So don't expect the Sacramento Kings to look night and day different. Hopefully they just look a little more polished tomorrow night and throughout the remainder of the season with the limited practice time that they're able to get. But Doug Christie shared what his and the Kings' approach will be to this playoff race that the Kings will be locked in for the next month and some change.
Like, this is basketball, man. It's not like brain surgery. We have to come out and we have to play good basketball. And most times in these positions, it's the team that finds their stride at this time. And that might have been a team that wasn't playing good early in the season. And all of a sudden, all the pundits say, wow, they're playing great. Well, no, they're playing together. They're playing at a high level. Maybe they don't have many injuries. Maybe somebody gets hot, whatever that is. But it's basketball. And the thing is, we want to play, first and foremost, a really good brand of basketball for our fans. And then we're playing for the brother beside us, and we're going to play hard as hell. And if we do that, we give ourselves a chance to win. And that's really all that you can ask for in this league. And I won't accept anything less, so that's where we're at.
I really like this from Doug for 2 reasons. We know what the ultimate goal is. The expectation is for this team to make the playoffs. So we know the end result, but they're not just going to get there, right? How do we judge this team over the next handful of weeks until they get to that end result or they don't? It's what Doug said right there. We're going to play really hard, right? That is how we judge the Kings on a nightly basis, whether they win or they lose. We watch this team and you ask yourself, did this team play really hard tonight? Did they play their all and just came up short because they're playing a Boston or an OKC? Ask your question. We're going to ask that question on Locked On Kings after every single game. Did they play really hard tonight? Did they give their all? That's the measuring stick over these final 27 games. And the reality is If the answer to that question is yes more than no, then I like the Kings' chances to, at the very least, secure a play-in spot and hopefully finish in that 7th or 8th seed. Another part of Kings practice today, we got to meet Markelle Fultz. We, being the members of the media, got to meet and spend some time with Markelle Fultz for the first time. And I'm going to play for you 3 questions that I got to ask Markelle and his answers to these questions. You should go and check out abc10.com. You can watch the full recap or his full press conference there, or full media session there, because I left this media session just being very impressed by Markelle and finding myself like not just rooting for him to be good for the Sacramento Kings, of course, but just rooting for him, right? So here are some of Markelle Fultz's answers to my questions.
What did you make of the opportunity, not just because this team needs more point guard and ball handling, but a team that's in the midst of a really tense playoff race here in the West? How much did that excite you joining a team that's ready for you to hit the ground running?
Super excited. You know, you always want to play playoff basketball and winning basketball. So for me, being able to have the opportunity where they need a point guard and seeing that I can, hopefully help them in that role, but also play meaningful basketball, that's all you dream of being a hooper growing up and wanting to be a very effective basketball player. So it's a perfect opportunity, but we got to take it one game at a time and just focus on that.
Zach just talked about how vocal you were right away. Is that something you just felt this team needed, or is that just who you were?
That's just something that I've learned to do as a point guard. Also, just coming from Orlando, being with a lot of young guys, I had to just be that voice on the floor, and I feel like communication is one way to help your teammates out and let them know where you're at, and to be able to pick up and just build confidence with your teammates. So it's second nature for me. It's something that I feel like can go anywhere. And I think as long as I continue to do that, I think it's something that's contagious, and I hope that everyone continues to pick that up, and we preach that.
So you're working with Coach Triano. What do you make of the offense and how quickly you picking everything up?
Oh, they make it pretty simple. It's basketball at the end of the day, but you want to know the terminologies. You want to be able to learn your teammates and know where they're best at. So for me, it's just about, again, putting those extra work in to be able to know the plays, to be able to, especially in my position, be able to put guys in their position and be able to understand the terminology.
I don't know, man. I like the kid. And he's not even a kid. He's 26 years old, which is actually exciting, too. Like Markelle Fultz, former number 1 overall pick. Obviously, his career has not gone the level that was expected when he was drafted into the league and has been battling injuries and jump shot issues and things of that nature, right? But he's 26 years old. Like, he's got a lot more in the tank, and he's someone that, do I expect him to completely change everything for the Sacramento Kings and all of a sudden he's going to be a perfect 6-man or guard off the bench and going to be the difference maker in the Kings making the playoffs or not? No, I don't have those expectations. But do I think a 26-year-old Markelle Fultz can help a team that desperately needs point guard depth in the middle of a tense playoff race in the West? 100% I do. I'm very excited to see Markelle Fultz play. Now, this doesn't matter as much at this time of year compared to like training camp, for example, when we're trying to figure lineups out, but the Kings wear different colored jerseys. The players wear different colored jerseys based off of the units that they're in, right? And the starters wear black, which is your typical starting 5. The bench players wear white. And Markelle Fultz was wearing white with Keon Ellis and Jonas Valanciunas and Jake LaRavia. So it seems to me that the expectation is that he is going to be a part of this Sacramento Kings second unit. I, at this point, would be pretty surprised if he doesn't play against the Golden State Warriors on tomorrow, on Friday. And again, realistic expectations. I don't expect Markelle Fultz to be a game changer, but I do think he can ultimately help the Sacramento Kings team win and give the Kings 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 minutes off of the bench as a playmaker and a facilitator and a ball handler that doesn't just take pressure off of Malik Monk, who can get a little bit of a break, but also doesn't require you to get playmaking out of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan more than a handful of times. That's just not their game, right? They can do it, but it's not something that you should be relying on a nightly basis every time Malik Monk steps off the floor. So I think Markelle Fultz can absolutely help the Sacramento Kings team. And again, just based off his comments, like I'm rooting for him. I alluded to it in a question in there. I didn't play the clip for you, but Zach LaVine, when he was having his media session with us, Zach shared that he was really impressed by Markelle Fultz. I mean, Fultz got off a plane, joined the team for the second game in New Orleans after signing with the team, joins the team, and is sitting there on the bench, doesn't play, but Zach LaVine says he was one of the most vocal players on that bench. And I asked Markelle about it, and you heard him. He's like, well, that's just kind of who I am, being a communicator. That's something that this Kings team definitely needs more of. Every team needs communication. You really can't have too much communication, in my opinion. So having Markelle Fultz take on some of that responsibility too, I think is just a small area where he can really help this Sacramento Kings team thrive. So now, enough talk. Let's see it in action. I will be inside the Golden One Center tomorrow night. Kings and Warriors. Part 3, a massive game in so many ways. I mean, every game from here on out you could say is a massive game. I won't go as far as must-win territory or anything like that, but if you win tomorrow night's game, you completely own the tiebreaker against the Golden State Warriors. And given how close they are in the standings, they're literally tied right now, that can make a big difference. If you lose to them, it opens up the door with one more meeting for them to steal that tiebreaker from you. Plus, you drop below them in the standings. You would drop to 10th if that happens. Now, the Kings, I guess, got a little bit of relief because, unfortunately, it's nothing you're happy about, but unfortunately, Victor Wembanyama will be out the remainder of the season. So that probably means the Spurs are going to drop off. So you have less to worry about with the Spurs coming and snatching that 10th spot. But the Phoenix Suns are lurking, and even the Portland Trailblazers are playing better basketball, and they take on a Lakers team that's, I know for a fact Luka Doncic isn't playing, and I don't think LeBron's going to be playing either. So Portland can absolutely still make a run of things for a play-in spot in the West. So the Kings have some work to do, not just to climb, but to make sure they don't fall out of it altogether. That would be a complete disaster for this team. But it begins tomorrow night. If you're coming to the game, come by the top of section 105, the media area. I'll be up there. Come by, say hi, and we'll talk a little Kings basketball together. And hopefully on tomorrow night's Locked On Kings podcast after the game, we're talking about a Kings win and the right step forward, a good jump start to this playoff race over these final 27 games. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.